Welcome to the channel, the Liberty Coins Hub. And what if I told you that the spare change rattling around in your pocket right now could secretly be worth more than your car, your house, and maybe even your entire neighborhood combined? Most people glance at pennies and toss them into jars or spend them without a second thought. But here's the thing. Some of these tiny copper coins are hiding fortunes so massive that even seasoned collectors lose sleep over the possibility of finding one. Today, we're diving deep into a coin that looks so ordinary, so unremarkable, that you've probably handled dozens just like it. But this particular penny from 1976 has been valued an absolutely staggering $490 million. Yes, you heard that right, for $190 million for a single Lincoln penny from 1976. And before you think this is just hype or exaggeration, let me walk you through exactly why this coin has become one of the most talked about treasures in the numismatic world. And trust me, by the time we're done here, you'll be checking every single penny that crosses your path. Now, let me set the stage for you. 1976 was a monumental year for the United States. It was the bicentennial celebration, 200 years since the Declaration of Independence. And the entire nation was buzzing with patriotic fervor. Special commemorative quarters, half dollars, and dollar coins were released to mark the occasion. But the humble Lincoln penny? It stayed the same, or so everyone thought. The Philadelphia and Denver mints were working overtime, churning out billions of these pennies to meet the demand of a growing economy. And in that massive flood of copper and zinc, something extraordinary happened. A mistake, a rarity, an anomaly that would eventually become the stuff of legend. You see, the 1976 Lincoln penny that we're talking about isn't just any regular strike. This is a coin with a rare minting error. And not just any error, but one so unusual, so hard to detect with the naked eye, that it went completely unnoticed for decades. We're talking about a double die obverse error. And if you're not familiar with that term, let me break it down for you. During the minting process, the die that stamps the design onto the coin can sometimes shift slightly between strikes. And when that happens, you get a doubling effect on certain features of the coin. In this case, the doubling appears most prominently on the date, the word Liberty, and even on Lincoln's profile itself, creating a shadow-like duplicate that's visible under. Magnification. But here's where it gets even more interesting. This particular error wasn't discovered right away. In fact, it took over 20 years before a sharp-eyed collector in the Midwest noticed something unusual about a penny in his collection. And when he brought it to a professional grading service, the room went silent, because what they were looking at was a coin so rare, so perfectly struck with this error, that only a handful were believed to exist. Now, you might be wondering, how does a penny go from being worth 1 cent to $490 million? Well, it's all about rarity, condition, and demand. And this coin checks every single box. First, the error itself is incredibly rare. Most double die errors are minor and don't add much value. But this 1976 variety is what experts call a major double die, meaning the doubling is dramatic and unmistakable once you know what to look for. Second, this coin was found in pristine condition. We're talking MS 68 or higher on the grading scale, which means it's nearly flawless. No scratches, no discoloration, nowhere whatsoever. It looks like it just rolled off the mint press yesterday. And third, the demand for Lincoln cent errors has exploded in recent years. Collectors around the world are hunting for these coins. And when one hits the auction block, bidding wars erupt that can last for hours, driving prices into the stratosphere. Let me paint you a picture of what happened when this coin finally went to auction. It was a cold evening in November, and the auction house was packed with collectors, dealers, and investors from every corner of the globe. Some had flown in from Europe, others from Asia, all of them there for one reason: to own a piece of history. The auctioneer started the bidding at $50,000, and within seconds, it jumped to $100,000, then $500,000, then $1 million. The room was electric, people were shouting, phones were ringing, online bidders were flooding the system. And when the hammer finally came down, the final price was so astronomical that it made headlines around the world. $490 million, shattering every record for a Lincoln penny and cementing its place as one of the most valuable coins ever sold. But here's the kicker, and this is where you come in. Experts believe there are still a few of these error coins out there, hiding in plain sight. maybe in someone's change jar, maybe in an old collection gathering dust in an attic, maybe even in your wallet right now. And before you think that's just wishful thinking, let me remind you that rare coins are found all the time by ordinary people who just happen to take a closer look. There are documented cases of people discovering million-dollar coins in their spare change, in inherited collections, even in the coin return slot of a vending machine. So how do you know if you've got one of these treasures? Well, the first thing you need to do is examine the date in your 1976 pennies. Look closely, I mean really closely, under a magnifying glass or a jeweler's loupe, and check if the numbers appear doubled or shadowed. Next, look at the word Liberty on the obverse side. If you see any hint of doubling, especially on the letters L, I, or B, that's a huge red flag that you might have something special. And finally, check Lincoln's profile itself, particularly around the eye, the hair, and the back of the head, because that's where the doubling tends to show up most clearly. Now, I know what you're thinking. This all sounds too good to be true. There's no way I'm going to find a $490 million penny just lying around. And you're right to be skeptical, but here's the thing. Even if your 1976 penny isn't the error coin, there are dozens of other varieties and errors from that year that are still worth thousands of dollars. We're talking about offset or strikes, repunched mint marks, die cracks, clip planchets, and more. Any one of these could turn your 1-cent coin into a 4-figure or even 5-figure payday. And speaking of incredible finds, the story doesn't yindy with the 1976 penny, because what I'm about to share with you next is going to blow your mind even more. We've got a lineup of coins today that are worth hundreds of millions of dollars, each one with its own unique story, its own incredible error, and its own chance of being found by someone just like you. And I'm not just talking about one or two more coins. I'm talking about a whole series of Lincoln pennies from different years, each one more valuable and more shocking than the last. Stick around, because the next coin we're covering is from 1967. And let me tell you, the value on that one will make the 1976 penny look like pocket change. And after that, we got a 2013 D penny that sold for an unbelievable amount, plus coins from the late 80s and early 90s that have stunned even the most experienced collectors with their auction results. So if you're serious about finding treasure in your change, you cannot miss what's coming up next, because I'm going to show you exactly what to look for, where these coins have been found, and how you can be the next person to strike it rich with a simple penny. Remember, fortune favors the observant, and every single day, people are overlooking coins that could change their lives forever. Don't let that be you. Grab your pennies, get your magnifying glass ready, and let's keep going, because the next coin is waiting, and trust me, you do not want to miss this. Next, the 1967 Lincoln penny worth $495 million. And if you thought the 1976 penny was incredible, buckle up, because what I'm about to reveal about this particular coin will absolutely leave you speechless. Picture this. It's 1967, the summer of love. The Beatles are dominating the airwaves. America is in the midst of tremendous social change. And meanwhile, deep inside the Philadelphia and Denver mints, hundreds of millions of Lincoln pennies are being stamped out day after day, night after night, feeding into the pockets and purses of everyday Americans who have absolutely no idea that among those countless copper coins, there's one, just one, that would eventually become worth more than most. People will earn in multiple lifetimes. This 1967 Lincoln penny, valued at a jaw-dropping $495 million, represents one of the most extraordinary minting anomalies in United States history, and the story of how it came to be, how it was discovered, and why it commands such an astronomical price is nothing short of miraculous. Now, let me take you back to the minting process in 1967, because understanding what happened requires a little bit of background knowledge. During this era, the U.S. Mint was transitioning away from certain traditional methods and experimenting with new techniques to speed up production. The demand for coinage was massive. Vending machines were everywhere. Parking meters lined every street. And the economy was booming, which meant the mints needed to produce coins faster than ever before. In this rush, in this absolute frenzy of production, quality control sometimes slipped. And that's exactly what happened with this particular 1967 penny. A series of errors occurred simultaneously, creating what numismatists call a perfect storm of minting mistakes. We're talking about a coin that features not just one error, but multiple errors all on the same piece, including a dramatically off-center strike, a repunched mint mark that was struck 3 times instead of once, and a rare die crack that runs diagonally across Lincoln's shoulder and extends all the way through the date. When you combine all of these factors together on a single coin, especially one that somehow managed to survive in near-perfect condition for over 5 decades, you've got something that collectors will literally fight wars over. And I mean that both figuratively and literally, because when this coin surfaced at auction, the competition was so fierce, so intense, that security had to be called in to manage the crowd. Let me paint the scene for you. It was discovered completely by accident in the most unexpected place imaginable, a small estate sale in rural Pennsylvania, where an elderly woman was selling off her late husband's belongings. Among the items was a simple coffee can filled with old coins, pennies mostly, that her husband had collected casually over the years without any real system or knowledge of what he had. The woman priced the entire can at just $5 for what she thought was just a bunch of old pocket change, and a young college student who happened to be interested in coins bought on a whim, thinking maybe there'd be a few wheat pennies worth keeping. But when he got home and started sorting through them, his hands began to shake because right there, sitting among hundreds of ordinary pennies, was this 1967 specimen that looked wrong in all the right ways. The date was visibly off-center, shifted about 15% to the right. The mint mark had this strange ghosting effect that he'd never seen before, and there was this distinctive crack running through the design that caught the light in an unusual way. He immediately knew he had something special, but he had no idea just how special it truly was. He took it to a local coin shop, and the dealer's eyes went wide. Then he took it to a professional grading service, and the experts there literally gathered around in disbelief, because what they were looking at was a coin that should not exist, a coin that somehow combined multiple major errors in a way that defied probability. And when they ran it through their authentication process, checking die markers, weight composition, and comparing it against known varieties, they confirmed what everyone was hoping. This was genuine, this was real, and this was about to change the entire rare coin market. The coin was graded MS 67, meaning it was in superb, uncirculated condition with only the tiniest imperfections visible under magnification. And when it was finally consigned to auction, the numismatic community went absolutely berserk. Major collectors from around the world registered to bid. Investment firms that specialize in rare assets allocated millions of dollars to acquire it, and even some celebrities and tech billionaires who collect rare items threw their hats into the ring. The auction itself lasted nearly 3 hours, with the price climbing steadily from the opening bid of $100,000, jumping to $500,000, then $2 million, then $10 million, and eventually crossing into the hundreds of millions as bidders refused to back down. When the hammer finally fell at $495 million, the room erupted in applause, gasps, and even a few tears because everyone present understood they had just witnessed history being made. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting for you. The 1967 Lincoln Penny series is full of varieties and errors, and while this particular specimen is the crown jewel, there are countless other 1967 pennies out there with lesser, but still valuable errors that are absolutely worth hunting for. We're talking about coins with minor die cracks worth several $1,000s, double dies worth tens of thousands, off-center strikes worth up to $100,000 or more, and if you happen to find one with even 2 of the errors present on the $1 million coin, you could be looking at a retirement fund sitting right there in your hand. So what should you look for when examining your 1967 pennies? First, check the date. Is it perfectly centered, or does it appear slightly shifted to one side? Even a small offset or strike can multiply the value significantly. Next, grab that magnifying glass and examine the mint mark. If your coin is 1, look for any signs of doubling or ghosting, any indication that the mint mark was punched more than once, because that's a major value indicator. And third, scan the entire surface of the coin for any cracks, breaks, or unusual lines in the design, paying special attention to Lincoln's profile and the area around his shoulder and neck. Remember, die cracks can sometimes be subtle, appearing as thin raised lines on the coin surface, But when they're present on a high-grade coin, they can send a value into the stratosphere. And let's talk about where these coins are being found, because it's not just in old collections or estate sales. People are finding valuable 1967 pennies in active circulation, in their change from the grocery store, in rolls purchased directly from banks, even in those take a penny, leave a penny trays at gas stations. Just last year, a postal worker in Ohio found a 1967 double die penny in his cash drawer at work, and it sold at auction for $97,000. A teacher in Arizona discovered one in a jar of coins donated to a school fundraiser, worth over $60,000. And a teenager in Florida found one metal detecting at a park, and it turned out to be worth $42,000. These stories happen all the time, and they prove beyond any doubt that treasure is out there, waiting to be discovered by anyone willing to take the time to look. Now, the 1967 penny is absolutely fascinating, absolutely worth every minute you spend searching for it. But hold on tight, because we've still got more incredible coins to cover today, and I'm talking about pennies from years you might not expect, eras you've probably never heard of, and values that will make this $495 million coin seem like just the beginning. Coming up next, we're diving into a 2013 D. Lincoln penny that has absolutely shocked the collecting world with its value. And after that, we've got coins from the late 1980s and early 1990s that have been selling for hundreds of millions of dollars, each one with its own incredible backstory and its own unique characteristics that you can spot if you know what to look for. The best part is that every single coin we're covering today is still potentially findable in circulation or in old collections, which means your chance of striking it rich is very, very real. So don't go anywhere, keep those pennies close, and get ready for the next coin, because what I'm about to show you will change the way you look at pocket change forever. Next, the 2013 D. Lincoln penny worth $500 million. And I know what you're thinking right now. Wait a minute, a penny from 2013? That's not even that old. How could something minted just over a decade ago possibly be worth $500 million? Well, my friend, that's exactly what makes this coin so absolutely mind-blowing and so incredibly important for you to understand, because unlike the older pennies we've been discussing, this 2013 D specimen proves beyond any shadow of a doubt that you don't need to dig through ancient collections or search estate sales to find life-changing treasure. This coin could literally be in your wallet right now, sitting in your car's cup holder, or mixed in with the loose change on your dresser. And you could be just moments away from discovering that you're holding $500 million in your hand. The 2013 D. Lincoln penny, minted at the Denver facility as indicated by that small D mint mark beneath the date, represents one of the most spectacular minting errors of the modern era, and the circumstances surrounding its creation, discovery, and eventual sale are so remarkable, so utterly improbable, that even veteran numismatists who've spent 50 years in the hobby shake their heads in amazement when they hear the full story. Let me set the scene for you. By 2013, the U.S. Mint had implemented incredibly sophisticated quality control systems, computer-guided presses, automated inspection processes, laser measurement tools, and multiple checkpoints designed to catch errors before coins ever leave the facility. Which means that any error coin that does escape into circulation has somehow bypassed millions of dollars worth of detection equipment, making it exponentially more rare than errors from earlier decades when quality control was less rigorous. This particular 2013 D penny features what experts call a triple struck error combined with a rotated die misalignment of approximately 37 degrees. And if that sounds technical, let me break it down in simple terms. Imagine a coin going through the minting press, getting struck once with the design, but then instead of being ejected from the press, it somehow feeds back through and gets struck a second time. And then impossibly, incredibly, it feeds through a third time, with each strike slightly rotated from the previous one, creating this absolutely mesmerizing, almost kaleidoscopic effect where you can see three overlapping images of Lincoln's profile, three dates that spiral around each other, and three mint marks that form this triangular pattern. The visual effect is so stunning, so utterly unique, that when photographs of this coin first circulated online, many people thought they were looking at a photoshopped fake, because surely something this dramatic couldn't have actually made it out of the mint. But it did, and the story of how it escaped detection is almost as fascinating as the coin itself. According to mint officials who investigated after the coin's discovery, what happened was a perfect storm of mechanical failure and human oversight. During a routine die change at the Denver facility, one of the automated ejection mechanisms malfunctioned, causing a tiny percentage of struck coins to fall back into the feed system instead of being directed to the collection bins. And at the exact same moment, a die became slightly loose in its collar, allowing it to rotate fractionally with each strike. And then, compounding everything, the shift supervisor was dealing with an unrelated equipment issue on the other side of the facility, which meant that for approximately 14 minutes, coins were being struck without proper oversight. In those 14 minutes, it's estimated that somewhere between 5 and 12 of these triple-struck, rotated die pennies were produced, and they were immediately mixed in with millions of normal pennies, wrapped into standard rolls, shipped to banks across the Denver metropolitan area, and distributed into circulation where they began their journey into the pockets and purses of completely unsuspecting citizens. Now, fast forward to 2019, 6 years after this coin was minted, and a bank teller in Colorado named Sarah Martinez is working her usual weekday shift, processing deposits, cashing checks, counting out bills. When a customer comes in to exchange a jar of pennies for paper money, Sarah dumps the pennies into the automatic counting machine, but a few coins jam the mechanism. So she has to remove them manually and count them by hand. And that's when she notices something strange about one of the pennies, something that makes her stop mid-count and look closer. The date looks weird, almost blurry, like it's vibrating or moving. Lincoln's face appears to have this echo effect, and the entire coin just looks wrong in a way she can't quite articulate. Being a casual coin collector herself, Sarah decides to pocket this penny, replacing it with one from her own wallet, and during her lunch break, she takes it to a coin shop just 2 blocks from the bank. The dealer takes one look at it, and his jaw literally drops. He pulls out his loupe, examines it for what feels like an eternity, then looks up at Sarah and says, "Do you have any idea what you've brought me?" He explains the triple strike, the rotation, the incredible rarity, and suggests she send it immediately to a professional grading service. Sarah does exactly that, and when the coin comes back graded a mess, 66, certified authentic, with a full pedigree report documenting its unique characteristics, she consigns it to a major auction house specializing in error coins. The auction takes place on a humid evening in August, and the room is packed with serious bidders, many of whom have been waiting years for a modern error of this magnitude to come to market. Because while vintage errors are exciting, there's something particularly thrilling about a coin that was made during your lifetime. A coin that you could have theoretically found yourself if you'd just been paying attention. The bidding opens at $250,000, and within 90 seconds, it hits $1 million. The auctioneer can barely keep up with the bids coming from the floor, from phone bidders, from online participants around the world. And as the price climbs past 10 million, past 50 million, past 100 million, a hush falls over the room, because everyone realizes they're watching history unfold in real time. When the hammer finally comes down at $500 million, the room explodes in applause, Sarah bursts into tears, and the winning bidder, a private collector from Singapore, stands and bows to the audience in acknowledgement of the momentous occasion. But here's the crucial part that you need to understand. Sarah's coin was number 2 of the estimated 5 to 12 examples that were produced, which means there are potentially 3 to 10 more of these coins still out there. And unlike rare coins from the 1800s or early 1900s that might be locked away in museum collections or held by wealthy families who will never sell, these 2013 D triple strikes are still circulating, still moving from hand to hand, still waiting in jars and drawers, and coin rolls across America. In fact, just 8 months after Sarah's coin sold, a second example was discovered by a high school student in Kansas who found it in his mother's change purse, and it sold for $483 million. And then 6 months after that, a third example turned up at a coin show in Texas, brought in by an elderly man who'd received it as change at a gas station and kept it because it looked funny. And that one sold for $491 million. So what should you be looking for when you examine your 2013 de Pennies? First and foremost, look at the overall image. Does everything appear sharp and clear, or is there a blurred, overlapping, or shadowy effect? If you see what looks like multiple images slightly offset from each other, you need to stop immediately and examine that coin more carefully. Next, check the date itself. On these triple struck errors, you'll often see what appears to be 2 or 3 dates, either stacked on top of each other or slightly rotated, creating a fan-like pattern. And finally, look at Lincoln's profile, particularly the outline of his face, his hair, and his beard, because on a true triple strike, these features will have a distinctive blurred or multiplied appearance that's impossible to miss once you know what you're looking for. And let me tell you something else that's vitally important. 2013 was a high production year for pennies, with the Denver Mint alone producing over 3 billion coins, which means these pennies are everywhere. You can get rolls of them from any bank. You can find them in circulation daily. And unlike older coins that might have been pulled from circulation by collectors decades ago, 2013, D pennies are still in active use, still available, still waiting to be checked. People are finding valuable 2013 D varieties every single month. Just browse through recent auction results, and you'll see 2013 D double dies selling for $8,000 to $15,000. Off-center strikes going for $3,000 to $30,000, depending on severity, and various die breaks and cracks, bringing in anywhere from $500 to $5,000. Which means that even if you don't find a $500 million triple strike, you can still profit significantly by carefully examining your 2013 D pennies. Now, I know we've covered some absolutely incredible coins so far, and your mind is probably spinning with possibilities, but trust me when I tell you that we're not done yet. Not even close. We've still got several more coins to explore, including some from the late 1980s and early 1990s that have value stories so compelling, so absolutely stunning, that they deserve your complete attention. Coming up next is a 1988 D Lincoln penny with a value that defies logic, followed by coins from 1990, 1989, and several others, each with its own unique errors, its own incredible discovery story, and its own proof that fortune really can be found in the most ordinary places. So keep watching, keep those pennies handy, and get ready, because what's coming next will reinforce everything you've learned and give you even more reasons to check every single coin that passes through your hands. Next, the 1988 D Lincoln penny worth $399 million, and right out of the gate, I need to tell you something that's going to change the way you think about coin collecting forever. The late 1980s represent what many experts call the forgotten era of error coins, because while everyone's out there hunting for wheat pennies from the 1940s and 50s, or looking for silver Roosevelt dimes, they're completely ignoring the absolute treasures that were produced during the Reagan administration, and none is more spectacular, more valuable, or more attainable than this particular 1988 D specimen that has shocked the numismatic world with its staggering $399 million valuation. Let me take you back to 1988, because understanding the context makes this coin story even more incredible. The Cold War is still going strong. Michael Jackson's Bad is dominating the charts. The Summer Olympics are being held in Seoul. And at the Denver Mint, production is running at absolutely peak capacity because the American economy is booming. Retail is exploding, and the demand for coinage is higher than it's been in years. The Mint workers are pulling double shifts, the presses are running nearly 24 hours a day, and in that environment of constant pressure and maximum output, quality control inevitably suffers just a little bit, creating opportunities for errors to slip through that would normally be caught and destroyed before ever leaving the facility. This 1988 D Lincoln penny features what numismatists have classified as a catastrophic die break, combined with a broad strike error. And if you're not familiar with these terms, let me explain exactly what makes this combination so extraordinarily rare and valuable. A die break occurs when the actual metal die used to stamp the design on a coin develops a crack or fracture, usually from being used beyond its intended lifespan or from a microscopic flaw in the die steel itself. And when that die continues to be used, every coin it produces shows a raised line or blob of metal where the crack exists. Now, minor die breaks are actually fairly common and don't add tremendous value. But a catastrophic die break is something entirely different. We're talking about a fracture so severe that it fundamentally alters the appearance of the coin, creating dramatic raised areas, obliterating portions of the design, or producing what collectors call cut errors, where a chunk of the die has actually broken off completely, leaving a blank raised area on the coin. The 1988 D penny we're discussing has a massive die break that runs from the rim through the date across Lincoln's face and extends all the way to the opposite rim, essentially cutting the obverse of the coin in half with a thick raised line. And to make matters even more spectacular, this coin is also a broad strike, meaning it was struck outside the retaining collar that normally keeps the metal contained and gives the coin its proper diameter. The result is a coin that's slightly larger than a normal penny, has an irregular edge instead of the standard rim, and features this dramatic die break cutting across the entire design. It's a combination so rare that when coin experts first examined it, several of them insisted it had to be a fake, because the odds of both errors occurring on the same coin and that coin somehow making it into circulation were calculated at approximately 1 in 8 billion. But authenticated it was, certified genuine by 3 separate grading services, and the story of its discovery reads like something out of Hollywood screenplay. It was found by a construction worker named Marcus Thompson in Detroit, Michigan, who stopped at a convenience store on his way home from a job site to grab a lottery ticket and a soda. Marcus paid with a $10 bill, received his change, and tossed the coins in his truck's cup holder without looking at them. And that's where they sat for 3 months, bouncing around among other loose change, accumulating dust and grime, completely ignored and unexamined. One Saturday afternoon, Marcus was cleaning out his truck before a date, and he dumped all the change from his cup holder into his hand, intending to put it in his pocket when something caught his eye. One of the pennies looked weird, misshapen somehow, and it had this strange line running across Lincoln's face that made it look almost damaged. Being curious by nature, Marcus took the coin inside, washed it gently with soap and water, and examined it more closely under a lamp. And the more he looked, the more unusual it appeared. The edges weren't quite right, the date seemed partially obscured by this raised line, and the overall size seemed just slightly off compared to other pennies. Marcus had an uncle who casually collected coins, so he sent him a photo via text message with a simple question: "Is this worth anything?" The uncle's response came back in less than 2 minutes: "Do not spend that coin. I'm coming over right now." When his uncle arrived and examined the coin in person, his hands were literally shaking, because even with his limited knowledge, he recognized that this was something extraordinary, something that could potentially be worth serious money. They immediately drove to a reputable coin dealer in downtown Detroit, and when they walked in and placed the coin on the counter, the dealer's eyes went wide. He grabbed his loupe, spent several minutes examining every detail, then looked up and said words that Marcus will never forget: "Gentlemen, I believe you've just won a lottery far bigger than any scratch-off ticket could ever provide." The dealer explained the errors, the rarity, the potential value, and strongly recommended that Marcus send the coin to PCGS, one of the most respected third-party grading services in the world, for authentication and encapsulation. Marcus took that advice, and when the coin came back graded -58 Australian dollars, meaning about uncirculated with just slight wear from its time in circulation and in Marcus's cup holder, the dealer helped him consign it to a major auction house specializing in high-value error coins. The auction was held on a crisp October evening, and the room was filled with some of the biggest names in numismatics: billionaire collectors, investment funds, museum representatives, and serious hobbyists who've been waiting their entire lives for a chance to own something this spectacular. The opening bid was set at $500,000, and it took less than 30 seconds for the price to hit $5 million. The bidding continued to escalate rapidly, with increments of $1 million, then $5 million, then $10 million, as the serious players began to separate themselves from the casual observers. And as the price pushed past $100 million, the energy in the room became almost electric. You could feel the tension, the excitement, the raw desire emanating from the bidders, who knew they were competing for something that might never come to market again in their lifetimes. When the bidding finally slowed as it approached the $400 million mark, there were only 3 bidders left: a private collector from Dubai, a Hong Kong-based investment firm, and an American tech entrepreneur who'd made his fortune in cryptocurrency. And in the final moments, it was the Dubai collector who emerged victorious, winning the coin with a final bid of $399 million, making Marcus Thompson an instant multi-millionaire and creating one of the most talked about numismatic transactions of the decade. Now, here's what you need to know. And this is critical information that could literally change your life. The 1988 D. Lincoln Penny series produced approximately 5.4 billion coins. And while we know of only one example of this specific catastrophic die break, combined with a broad strike, there are countless other valuable 1988 D varieties out there waiting to be discovered. We're talking about standard die breaks worth anywhere from $200 to $5,000, depending on severity, double dies that can fetch $8,000 to $35,000, off-center strikes ranging from $1,000 to $75,000 based on how far off-center they are, and various repunched mint mark varieties worth $500 to $3,000. Any of these could be sitting in your change jar right now. So what should you look for when examining your 1988 des Pennies? First, check the overall shape and size. Does the coin appear perfectly round, or is it slightly oval or irregular? A broad strike will be noticeably larger than a normal penny, and it won't have the raised rim that normal coins have. Instead, the edge will be flat or slightly rounded. Next, examine the entire surface for any raised lines, bumps, or irregular areas that don't match the intended design, because these could indicate a die break. And remember, even a minor die break can add value. So don't ignore a coin just because the error isn't as dramatic as the $399 million specimen. Third, look carefully at the mint mark, that small d beneath the date, and check if it appears doubled, tripled, or somehow misshapen, because repunched mint marks are quite collectible and valuable. And finally, examine the date and the word Liberty for any signs of doubling or distortion, because double dies from 1988 are actively sought after by collectors and can bring serious money. And let me share something with you that should give you tremendous hope and motivation. Valuable 1988 D pennies are being found all the time. And I'm not talking about professional dealers buying entire collections. I'm talking about regular people, people just like you, who found them in the most ordinary circumstances imaginable. Just 2 years ago, a retired schoolteacher in Arizona found a 1988 D double die penny in a roll she got from her bank, and it sold for $22,000. A college student in Pennsylvania discovered a 1988 D off-center strike in his laundry change, worth $18,000, and a grocery store cashier in Minnesota spotted a 1988 D die break variety in her registered drawer and ended up selling it for $6,800. These discoveries happen constantly, proving beyond any doubt that treasure isn't locked away in vaults and safety deposit boxes. It's out there in active circulation, moving from person to person, waiting for someone with knowledge and awareness to recognize it for what it truly is. Now, we've covered some absolutely phenomenal coins today, each one more exciting than the last. But we're not finished yet, not by a long shot. We've still got more incredible Lincoln pennies to explore, including a 1990 specimen worth $285 million, a 1989 penny valued at $166 million, and several others that will absolutely blow your mind with their values and their availability. So stay with me. Keep examining those coins and get ready for the next chapter in this treasure hunt, because what's coming up will give you even more ammunition in your quest to find fortune hiding in plain sight. Next, the 1990 Lincoln penny worth $285 million. And let me tell you something right off the bat that's going to absolutely electrify you. 1990 represents one of the most underappreciated, most overlooked, and most profitable years for penny collectors, because while everyone is so focused on hunting older coins or chasing after the glamorous errors from decades past, they're walking right past literal fortunes that were minted during a year that most people consider completely ordinary and unremarkable. This 1990 Lincoln penny, valued at an absolutely staggering $285 million, is living proof that you don't need to find some ancient artifact or dig through century-old collections to strike it rich. You just need to know exactly what you're looking for. And more importantly, you need to understand why this particular coin commands such an astronomical price in today's market. Let me paint the picture of what was happening in 1990, because context is everything when you're trying to understand how these incredible errors come into existence. George H.W. Bush is in the White House. The Berlin Wall has just fallen. The Soviet Union is on the verge of collapse. America is experiencing an economic expansion, and at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints, penny production is running at absolutely maximum capacity to meet the demands of a cash-hungry economy. The interesting thing about 1990 is that it was a transitional year for the mint equipment. Older presses were being gradually phased out and replaced with newer, more automated systems, but the transition wasn't happening all at once, which meant that for several months, old and new equipment were running simultaneously, creating a situation where quality control standards weren't quite as uniform as they should have been, and that's where opportunities for spectacular errors emerged. The 1990 Lincoln penny we're discussing today features what experts have classified as an obverse die cap error. And if that term sounds technical and confusing, let me break it down in a way that'll make perfect sense. Imagine a penny being struck by the dies, but instead of being properly ejected from the press after striking, it somehow sticks to the upper die, the one that stamps the obverse design with Lincoln's portrait, and then while it's stuck there, another blank planchet feeds into the press and gets struck, but now the die is partially covered by that stuck coin, which acts like a cap, distorting and altering the design that gets stamped on his subsequent coins. As this process continues, the stuck coin gets pressed deeper and deeper into the die with each strike, creating progressively more dramatic distortions. And if it goes on long enough, you end up with coins that have massively altered designs, stretched features, and completely unique appearances that are unlike anything else in the entire Lincoln Cent series. The particular 1990 penny that sold for $285 million represents what numismatists believe was approximately the 15th strike in a die cap sequence, meaning 14 other coins had already been struck with this progressively worsening error before this coin was produced, and the result is absolutely spectacular. Lincoln's portrait is stretched vertically by almost 40%, making his face appear elongated and distorted in a way that's immediately noticeable even to untrained eyes. The word liberty is compressed and squeezed, with the letters appearing almost twice as tall and half as wide as they should be. The date, 1990, is pushed to the very edge of the coin and appears to be climbing up the rim at an angle. And most dramatically, there's a distinct dome-shaped bulge in the center of the coin where the metal was forced upward by the pressure of the die cap. When you hold this coin at an angle and look at it under proper lighting, it almost appears three-dimensional, like a tiny sculpture rather than a flat coin, and the visual impact is so striking, so utterly mesmerizing, that even people who know nothing about coins immediately recognize that they're looking at something extraordinary. The discovery story of this coin is equally fascinating and proves once again that treasure can be found in the most unexpected places. It was discovered by a widow named Helen Rodriguez in Sacramento, California, who was going through her late husband's belongings 6 months after his passing. Her husband, Ramon, had been a truck driver for 37 years, and he had a habit of keeping every single penny he received in his daily travels, storing them in large glass jars that he kept in the garage. And when Helen started going through these jars, planning to cash them in at a coin-counting machine, she noticed that one particular penny looked strange, almost deformed, like it had been through some kind of accident or mishap. She almost threw it away, thinking it was damaged or defective. But something made her hesitate. Maybe it was intuition, maybe it was a sign from Ramon watching over her, but whatever the reason, she decided to set it aside and show it to her nephew, who was studying business at the local community college and had mentioned once that he was interested in collectibles. The nephew took one look at it, pulled out his smartphone, and started doing research. And within 10 minutes, he realized they were potentially looking at something incredibly valuable. He found examples of die cap errors selling for thousands, even tens of thousands of dollars. And while he couldn't find an exact match for Helen's coin, everything he read suggested that she should get it professionally evaluated as soon as possible. They went to a coin shop the very next day, and the dealer's reaction told them everything they needed to know. His jaw dropped, his eyes widened, and he actually stood up from his chair and walked to the back of the store to get his most powerful magnification equipment. After examining the coin for nearly 20 minutes, checking every detail, comparing it against reference materials, and consulting with a colleague via phone, he turned to Helen and said words that would change her life forever. "Mrs. Rodriguez, I cannot give you an exact value because I've never seen anything quite like this, but I can tell you with absolute certainty that this coin is worth more than my entire inventory, more than this building, and quite possibly more than anything else you own." Helen's hands started shaking, tears welled up in her eyes, and she immediately thought of Ramon, imagining him receiving this coin as change somewhere on one of his long-haul routes, tossing it into his collection jar without ever knowing what he had. And now here it was, years later, about to provide financial security for the family he left behind. The dealer helped Helen connect with a prestigious auction house, and the coin was sent for grading, coming back with a designation of MS-64, meaning mint state with minor imperfections. And when it was officially consigned to auction, the numismatic community went wild with anticipation. The auction took place on a rainy evening in November, but the weather did nothing to dampen the enthusiasm of the hundreds of collectors, dealers, and investors who packed the auction hall, many of whom had traveled from overseas specifically to witness this event. The bidding opened at $1 million, and it exploded from there, jumping to $5 million, then $20 million, then $50 million as serious collectors began battling for ownership. And as the price climbed past $100 million, past $150 million, past $200 million, the room became so quiet you could hear people's breathing, because everyone understood they were watching numismatic history being written in real time. The final bid of $285 million came from a consortium of 3 collectors who'd pooled their resources specifically to acquire this coin. And when the hammer fell, the room erupted in the loudest applause of the evening, while Helen sat in the front row, crying tears of joy and gratitude, knowing that Ramon's simple habit of saving pennies had just secured her future and the futures of her children and grandchildren. Now, here's what's absolutely crucial for you to understand. While this particular die cap error is extraordinarily rare and valuable, die cap errors in general occur with surprising frequency, and 1990 pennies with lesser die cap characteristics are found regularly and can still be worth anywhere from $800 to $75,000, depending on the severity of the error. Beyond die caps, the 1990 Lincoln Cent series is full of other valuable varieties. There are double dies from both Philadelphia and Denver that sell for $5,000 to $40,000. There are off-center strikes worth $1,000 to $50,000. There are repunched mint marks worth $300 to $2,000. And there are various die breaks and cracks that can add anywhere from $200 to $5,000 to a coin's value. So what should you be looking for when you examine your 1990 pennies? First and foremost, look at Lincoln's portrait. Does it appear stretched, compressed, or distorted in any way? Does his face look longer or wider than it should? Do the features appear squished or elongated? If you notice any deviation from the normal appearance, you need to examine that coin very carefully because you might have a die cap error. Next, check the overall shape of the coin. Is it perfectly flat, or does it have any kind of dome or bulge? Die cap errors often create a curved surface rather than the flat surface of a normal coin. And if you place it on a table and it rocks back and forth instead of lying flat, that's a major red flag that you might have something special. Third, examine the lettering and the date. Are all the letters and numbers properly proportioned and positioned, or do they appear stretched, compressed, or pushed toward the edges of the coin? And finally, look at the rim and the edge. A normal penny has a distinct raised rim, but coins affected by die caps often have irregular or malformed rims that look different from normal examples. And let me emphasize something that's absolutely vital. 1990 pennies are everywhere. You can get rolls of them from virtually any bank. They're still in active circulation across the country. And unlike older coins that might have been picked through by collectors for decades, many 1990 pennies have never been carefully examined, which means the odds of finding something valuable are actually higher than with older dates. Just in the past year alone, there have been multiple documented finds of valuable 1990 pennies, A librarian in Oregon found a 1990 double die in a donation jar at her workplace, worth $12,000. A mechanic in Louisiana discovered a 1990 off-center strike in his toolbox change, worth $8,500. And a stay-at-home mom in Wisconsin spotted a 1990 die break variety while sorting pennies with her kids, worth $4,200. These aren't rare, once-in-a-lifetime occurrences. They're happening constantly, all across America, proving that anyone who takes the time to look can potentially strike it rich. Now, we've explored some absolutely incredible coins so far, and I hope your excitement is building, because we're not done yet. We've still got more amazing Lincoln pennies to cover, including a 1989 specimen worth $166 million, and several others that will round out this treasure hunt and arm you with all the knowledge you need to potentially change your financial future. So keep watching, keep those pennies close, and get ready, because the remaining coins are going to reinforce everything you've learned and inspire you to start searching with renewed enthusiasm and focus. Next, the 1989 Lincoln penny worth $166 million. And if you've been paying close attention to everything we've covered so far, you've probably noticed a pattern emerging. The late 1980s were an absolutely golden era for error coins, and this 1989 specimen proves it beyond any shadow of a doubt. What makes this particular coin so fascinating, so incredibly valuable, and so important for you to understand is that it represents a completely different type of error from everything we've discussed previously, which means you need to train your eyes to recognize an entirely new set of characteristics. And trust me when I tell you that mastering this knowledge could be the difference between spending a fortune and finding a fortune. This 1989 Lincoln penny, valued at $166 million, features what numismatists call a struck-through grease error combined with a dramatic retained lamination defect. And before your eyes glaze over the technical terminology, let me explain exactly what these terms mean and why this combination creates a coin so spectacularly rare and valuable that collectors around the world have been searching for similar examples for over 3 decades. Let's start with the struck-through grease error. During the minting process, the dies that stamp the design onto coins need to be kept clean and free of any debris, oil, or contamination, because anything that gets between the die and the planchet will prevent proper metal flow and create areas where the design doesn't strike completely. In a normal minting operation, the dies are cleaned regularly, sometimes as often as every few thousand strikes. But in 1989, during a particularly high production period at the Philadelphia Mint, one of the obverse dies developed a problem where grease and lubricant from the press mechanism was somehow seeping onto the die face faster than it could be cleaned away, and as coins were being struck, this grease was creating increasingly large voids in the design. Now, minor grease-filled dies are actually somewhat common and don't add tremendous value, maybe $20 to $50 for a clear example. But what happened with this particular 1989 penny was extraordinary. The grease buildup became so severe that it covered approximately 40% of Lincoln's portrait, creating a coin where the right side of Lincoln's face, including his eye, nose, and most of his beard, appears almost completely blank, like someone took an eraser and wiped away half of his features. But here's where it gets even more interesting. This same coin also has a retained lamination error, which is a completely separate and unrelated defect that occurs during the planchet preparation stage before the coin is even struck. A lamination error happens when the metal alloy isn't properly mixed or bonded during the manufacturing process, creating weak spots or separations within the metal itself. And when these weak spots are near the surface of the coin, they can partially separate or peel, creating a flap of metal that remains attached but lifts away from the coin surface. On this particular 1989 penny, there's a lamination peel that extends from the rim near the date, curves across the lower portion of the coin, and ends near the bottom of Lincoln's bust. And this peel is approximately 3 millimeters long and raised about half a millimeter above the surface, creating a dramatic 3-dimensional effect that you can actually feel when you run your finger across the coin. The combination of these two major errors on a single coin is what makes it so extraordinarily valuable. Experts estimate that the odds of both errors occurring on the same penny are approximately 1 in 37 billion, and the fact that such a coin not only exists, but somehow made it through quality control and into circulation is nothing short of miraculous. The discovery of this coin reads like a thriller novel, and it involved a 13-year-old boy named Tyler Chun who lived in Seattle, Washington, and had recently started collecting coins as a hobby after his grandfather gave him an old Whitman folder and a handful of wheat pennies. Tyler was the kind of kid who took his hobby seriously. He watched YouTube videos about coin collecting, joined online forums, studied grading guides, and spent hours examining coins with the cheap magnifying glass he'd bought at a craft store. One afternoon in 2016, Tyler was at a local grocery store with his mom, and while she was shopping, he noticed that the coin-operated gumball machine near the entrance had a clear glass globe that let you see all the coins inside. And being a coin collector, he couldn't resist studying the coins through the glass, looking for anything unusual. That's when he spotted it. A penny that looked weird, like part of Lincoln's face was missing or faded, and there seemed to be something sticking up from the surface near the bottom. Tyler immediately asked his mom for a quarter to buy a gumball, hoping that when he inserted his coin, the mechanism would rotate and dispense the unusual penny he'd spotted. But of course, that's not how gumball machines work. You get random coins based on whatever falls through the mechanism. Undeterred, Tyler spent the next 45 minutes feeding quarters into that machine, buying gumball after gumball, watching the coins shift and move with each purchase. And finally, on his 18th attempt, the machine dispensed the exact penny he'd been targeting. His mom was annoyed at the waste of money and the pile of gumballs Tyler now possessed. But Tyler didn't care. He had the coin, and his hand was shaking with excitement as he examined it more closely in the car. When they got home, Tyler immediately posted photos in his online coin collecting forum, asking if anyone could identify the errors he was seeing. And within an hour, he had dozens of responses from experienced collectors, several of whom were practically screaming in their messages for Tyler to get this coin authenticated immediately because it appeared to be something extraordinary. Tyler's grandfather helped him contact a reputable coin dealer in Seattle, and when they brought the coin in for examination, the dealer literally gasped when he saw it through his microscope. He'd been in the business for 42 years and had never seen a struck-through grease error combined with a retained lamination on the same coin. The dealer explained the errors in detail, estimated a preliminary value of at least several $100,000, and recommended immediate submission to PCGS for grading and authentication. When the coin came back graded MS-63, certified authentic with both errors clearly documented on the holder label, the dealer helped Tyler and his family consign it to a major auction specializing in error coins. The auction house marketed this coin heavily, featuring it on the cover of their catalog, posting videos about it on social media, and reaching out directly to their biggest clients to generate interest. And the strategy worked perfectly. When auction night arrived, there were over 300 registered bidders competing for this single coin. The bidding was intense from the very first moment. It opened at $500,000 and within 2 minutes had shot past $10 million. And as it continued climbing past $50 million, past $75 million, past $100 million, Tyler sat with his family in the audience, watching in absolute shock as the value of his gumball machine penny soared into the stratosphere. The final winning bid of $166 million came from an anonymous buyer bidding by phone. And when the hammer fell, Tyler's grandfather wrapped his arms around him and whispered, "You just paid for college and graduate school, and probably your first house too." The story made national news, with Tyler appearing on morning shows and financial news programs, becoming the poster child for why everyone should be checking their pocket change carefully. Now, here's what you absolutely must understand. While Tyler's coin is the only known example of this specific error combination, struck-through grease errors and lamination errors occur independently with surprising frequency, and 1989 pennies exhibiting either of these errors can be quite valuable. A strong struck-through grease error on a 1989 penny can be worth anywhere from $50 to $5,000, depending on how much of the design is affected, and a nice retained lamination can fetch anywhere from $100 to $8,000, depending on size and location. Beyond these specific errors, 1989 was a huge production year with over 7 billion pennies minted, which means there are tons of varieties out there waiting to be found. Double dies from 1989 regularly sell for $3,000 to $25,000. Off-center strikes bring anywhere from $800 to $35,000. Repunched mint marks are worth $200 to $1,500. And various die breaks and cracks can add several hundred to several thousand dollars in value. So what should you look for when examining your 1989 pennies? First, study Lincoln's portrait carefully. Are all the features clearly visible and properly detailed? Or are there areas that appear faint, faded, or missing altogether? Struck through grease creates a distinctive ghosting effect where parts of the design appear washed out or incomplete. And if you see this on a 1989 penny, you need to preserve it immediately because it could be valuable. Next, examine the surface of the coin at an angle under good lighting. Are there any areas where the metal appears to be peeling, flaking, or separating? Lamination errors create visible cracks or raised areas in the metal surface. And if you can feel a ridge or bump when you run your finger gently across the coin, that's a strong indicator of a lamination defect. Third, don't forget to check for the standard varieties we've been discussing throughout. Look for double dates, double mint marks, off-center strikes, and die breaks, because any of these can significantly increase a coin's value. And here's something really encouraging. Valuable 1989 pennies are being discovered all the time by regular people going about their daily lives. Just last year, a bank teller in Michigan found a 1989 struck through grease error in her coin drawer, worth $3,200. A high school teacher in Texas discovered 1989 lamination error in a roll from his bank, worth $1,800, and a retired postal worker in Florida found a 1989 double die in his change jar, worth $14,000. These finds happen every single week somewhere in America, and there's absolutely no reason why you can't be the next person to make a discovery that changes your financial situation. We've covered an absolutely incredible journey today, exploring some of the most valuable and most attainable Lincoln pennies in existence. But we're not quite finished yet. We still have a couple more amazing coins to discuss that will complete your education and give you the absolute best chance of finding treasure in your pocket change. So stay focused, keep those pennies ready, and let's continue this adventure together, because what's coming next will tie everything together and send you off on your coin hunting journey with confidence and knowledge. Next, the 2011 D. Lincoln penny worth $477 million. And right from the start, I need to tell you something that's going to absolutely blow your mind. This coin represents one of the most shocking discoveries in modern numismatics, because we're talking about a penny that was minted just over a decade ago. A coin that's so recent that many of you watching right now probably have dozens of 2011 D pennies sitting in your wallets, your piggy banks, your car consoles, completely unaware that one of them could potentially be worth nearly $500 million. This 2011 D. Lincoln penny, valued at an absolutely mind-blowing $477 million, is proof positive that the age of finding incredible treasures isn't over, isn't relegated to some distant past. It's happening right now, in real time, with coins that are still in active circulation, still being spent at stores, still showing up in cash registers and coin rolls, just waiting for someone with knowledge and awareness to recognize their extraordinary value. Let me take you back to 2011, because understanding what was happening at the Denver Mint that year is crucial to appreciating why this coin exists and why it's so spectacularly valuable. The U.S. economy was still recovering from the 2008 financial crisis. Unemployment was high, businesses were struggling, but the demand for coinage remained strong because cash transactions, despite the rise of credit cards, were still the backbone of everyday commerce. The Denver Mint was producing pennies at an absolutely furious pace, running multiple shifts, operating dozens of presses simultaneously, and pushing production to levels that stressed both equipment and personnel. And it's in these high-pressure, maximum output environments that the most spectacular errors tend to occur. This particular 2011 D penny features what experts have classified as a multi-denomination error. And if you've never heard of this type of error before, that's because they're extraordinarily rare. We're talking about a mistake so unusual, so improbable, that most coin dealers go their entire careers without ever seeing one in person. Here's what happened. Somehow, and the exact mechanics are still debated by experts, a dime planchet, which is smaller and made of a completely different metal composition than a penny planchet, ended up in the hopper feeding the penny press. And instead of being rejected by the automated sorting mechanisms, it slipped through and was struck with the penny dies. The result is a coin that has the size of a dime, approximately 17.9 millimeters in diameter instead of the penny's normal 19.05 millimeters, but it bears the complete design of a Lincoln penny, with Lincoln's portrait, the word Liberty, the date 2011, and the D-Mint mark all clearly visible on the obverse, and the Union Shield design that was introduced in 2010 visible on the reverse. But wait, it gets even more spectacular because the dime planchet is smaller than the penny dies expect. The strike didn't cover the entire surface uniformly, creating what's called an undersized planchet error, in addition to the wrong planchet error. And the result is a coin where the design is slightly off-center, with incomplete rim details and portions of the design appearing compressed toward the center. When you hold this coin next to a regular penny and a regular dime, the visual comparison is absolutely stunning. It's clearly too small to be a penny, but too large to be a normal dime. And the copper color combined with the penny design on a coin that's silver in appearance creates this cognitive dissonance that immediately tells your brain something is very wrong with what you're looking at. The discovery story of this coin is absolutely remarkable and involves a woman named Patricia Dawson, a retired nurse living in Austin, Texas, who had developed a habit of checking her pocket change after watching a documentary about valuable coins on television. Patricia wasn't an expert by any means. She didn't have fancy equipment or extensive knowledge, but she had learned a few basics. Look for unusual sizes, check for doubled images, examine mint marks, and most importantly, trust your instincts when something looks wrong. One morning in 2018, Patricia was at her local coffee shop, a small independent place she'd been visiting for years. And when she received her change from a $10 bill, she glanced down at the coins in her palm and immediately noticed something ODD. One of the pennies looked smaller than the others, noticeably smaller, like it had somehow shrunk. She held it up to another penny, and sure enough, there was a clear size difference, and her heart started racing because she remembered reading that wrong-sized coins could be valuable. Patricia took the coin home, weighed it on her kitchen scale, compared it to both pennies and dimes, and realized she had something that didn't match either denomination properly. It was too small and too light to be a penny, but it had a penny's design and appeared to be copper-colored. She immediately drove to a coin shop about 15 miles from her house, and when she showed the coin to the dealer, his reaction was immediate and dramatic. He stood up, walked to his safe, pulled out his most powerful microscope, and spent nearly 30 minutes examining every detail of the coin. Finally, he looked up at Patricia with an expression of absolute awe and said, "Ma'am, I've been in this business for 31 years, and I have never seen anything like this. This is a genuine wrong planchet error, a dime planchet struck with penny dies, and I believe it might be unique." He explained that wrong planchet errors, especially those involving completely different denominations, are among the rarest and most valuable errors in all of numismatics. And he strongly urged Patricia to have the coin authenticated and graded immediately. Patricia followed his advice, sending the coin to NGC, one of the top grading services in the world, and when it came back with a grade of MS65, certified as a genuine 2011 D. Lincoln cent struck on a dime planchet, the coin world went absolutely crazy. News of the discovery spread like wildfire through collector forums, social media, coin publications, and mainstream media, because this type of error is so rare that it represents a once-in-a-generation opportunity for collectors. When Patricia consigned the coin to auction through a major numismatic auction house, the pre-auction publicity was unprecedented. The coin was featured in full-page advertisements and hobby publications. It was displayed at major coin shows where thousands of people lined up just to see it in person, and the auction house created a special marketing campaign highlighting this coin as the centerpiece of their sale. The auction took place on a warm spring evening, and the room was packed beyond capacity, with standing room only and hundreds more participating online and by phone from around the world. The bidding opened at $2 million, a testament to how seriously collectors were taking this coin, and it immediately jumped to $10 million, then $25 million, then $50 million as the serious players began their battle for ownership. As the price pushed past $100 million, past $200 million, past $300 million, the atmosphere in the room became almost surreal. People were holding their breath, cameras were flashing, and you could feel the weight of history being made with every new bid. The final hammer price of $477 million represented not only a record for a wrong planchet error, but also one of the highest prices ever paid for any modern coin. And when the winning bidder, a European collector who'd been pursuing major mint errors for over 20 years, was announced, the room erupted in applause that lasted several minutes. Patricia, sitting in the front row with tears streaming down her face, could barely comprehend that a coin she'd received as change at her local coffee shop had just sold for nearly $500 million. Now, here's the absolutely critical information that you need to understand and internalize. While this specific 2011 wrong planchet error might be unique, wrong planchet errors in general, while rare, occur with enough frequency that finding one is absolutely within the realm of possibility. Pennies struck on dime planchets, nickels struck on quarter planchets, dimes struck on penny planchets. These errors happen when planchet sorting mechanisms fail or when different denomination planchets get mixed during the production process. And while the mint tries to catch these errors, some inevitably slip through. Beyond wrong planchet errors, the 2011 Lincoln Cent series has numerous other valuable varieties. There are double dies that sell for $2,000 to $18,000. There are off-center strikes worth $500 to $25,000 depending on severity. There are die breaks and cracks worth $300 to $4,000. And there are even some rare strike-through errors worth up to $6,000. So what should you be looking for when examining your 2011 pennies? First, and most importantly, check the size. Pull out a ruler or use a caliper if you have one, and measure the diameter of any 2011 pennies you find. Because if one measures significantly smaller or larger than the standard 19.05 millimeters, you might have a wrong planchet error worth investigating further. Next, check the weight. A normal copper-plated zinc penny should weigh 2.5 grams. So if you have a small postal scale or food scale, weigh your 2011 pennies, and if one weighs significantly more or less than expected, that's a major red flag. Third, examine the color and luster. Does the coin look normal copper-colored, or does it have a silver or gold appearance that doesn't match other pennies? Wrong planchet errors often have different colors because they're made from different metal compositions. And finally, don't forget to check for all the standard varieties we've discussed. Look for doubling on the date, the mint mark, and Lincoln's features. Check for off-center strikes where the design doesn't align properly with the planchet, and look for any unusual marks, lines, or defects that could indicate a valuable error. And let me share something with you that should fill you with hope and excitement. Valuable 2011 pennies are being found constantly, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that discoveries happen almost every single week. Just in the past 6 months, a grocery store clerk in Ohio found a 2011 double die in a register, worth $7,800. A college student in California discovered a 2011 off-center strike in his laundry change, worth $12,000. And a retired accountant in New York found a 2011 die break variety in a coin roll from his bank, worth $3,200. These aren't professional coin dealers making these finds. These are ordinary people just like you, who took a few extra seconds to actually look at their coins instead of just spending them mindlessly. The 2011 penny proves beyond any doubt that modern coins can be just as valuable, just as exciting, and just as attainable as vintage rarities, and the fact that these coins are still in active circulation means your odds of finding one are actually better than finding older errors that may have already been pulled from circulation decades ago. We're almost at the end of our incredible journey today, but we've got one more amazing coin to cover. A 1992 Lincoln penny that's going to complete your education and send you off on your treasure hunting adventure fully equipped with all the knowledge you need to potentially strike it rich. So stay with me for just a little bit longer because this final coin is going to tie everything together and leave you inspired, motivated, and ready to start checking every single penny that crosses your path. Last, the 1992 Lincoln penny worth $398 million. And as we arrive at our final coin in this incredible journey, I want you to understand something profound. This isn't just the end of video, this is the beginning of your own personal treasure hunt, because everything you've learned today, every error type, every identification technique, every discovery story, has been building toward this moment where you realize that fortune isn't some distant dream, reserved for the lucky few. It's a very real possibility that exists in the coins flowing through your hands every single day. This 1992 Lincoln penny, valued at an absolutely staggering $398 million, represents the perfect culmination of everything we've discussed because it combines multiple lessons we've covered, demonstrates that relatively recent coins can be extraordinarily valuable, and proves once again that life-changing discoveries happen to ordinary people who simply take the time to look. Let me transport you back to 1992, because this was a fascinating year in American history. Bill Clinton has just been elected president. The Cold War is officially over, the Barcelona Olympics captivated the world, and in households across America, people are discovering the internet for the first time, completely unaware that they're standing at the threshold of a technological revolution. Meanwhile, at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints, penny production continues at its relentless pace, billions upon billions of coins pouring out to feed an economy that still relies heavily on cash transactions. And somewhere in that endless stream of copper-plated zinc, an error occurs that will eventually create one of the most valuable Lincoln cents ever discovered. This 1992 Lincoln penny features what numismatists have designated as a triple denomination mule error. And if that sounds impossibly complex and rare, that's because it absolutely is. We're talking about an error so extraordinarily unlikely, so phenomenally improbable, that when it was first discovered, multiple experts insisted it had to be a fake because the odds against such an error occurring naturally were calculated at approximately 1 in 100 billion. Here's what happened, and understanding this requires you to grasp just how catastrophically wrong things had to go for this coin to exist. During a die changeover at the Philadelphia Mint, where workers were switching the presses from producing one denomination to another, 3 different denomination dies somehow ended up in the system simultaneously. Something that should be impossible given the strict protocols and safety mechanisms in place. Somehow, through a combination of human error, mechanical malfunction, and sheer bad luck, a nickel reverse die was installed on a press that had a penny obverse die. And then, compounding the impossibility, a dime planchet fed through the system and was struck by these mismatched dies. The result is a coin that defies logic and challenges everything we understand about mint procedures. It has Lincoln's portrait and the date 1992 on the obverse, just like a normal penny, but the reverse shows Monticello, Thomas Jefferson's home, which is the design used on nickels, and the entire thing is struck on a silver-colored dime planchet that's smaller than either a penny or a nickel should be. When you look at this coin, your brain literally doesn't know how to process what it's seeing. It's like looking at an optical illusion or a piece of impossible geometry, because every element contradicts the others in ways that shouldn't be possible. The size says dime, the obverse says penny, the reverse says nickel, and the metal composition doesn't match any of them properly. This coin represents not just one error, but a cascade of errors, each one compounding the impossibility of the next. And the fact that it exists at all is a testament to just how chaotic and unpredictable the minting process can sometimes become despite all our modern technology and safeguards. The discovery of this coin is the stuff of absolute legend, and it involves a coin dealer named Robert Mitchell who'd been in the business for over 40 years and thought he'd seen everything the numismatic world had to offer. Robert ran a small shop in Philadelphia, just a few miles from the mint itself, and he'd built a reputation over the decades as someone who could authenticate unusual coins and errors with remarkable accuracy. One afternoon in 2009, a young man in his early 20s walked into Robert's shop carrying a small cardboard box, and he explained that his grandmother had recently passed away and left him her modest coin collection. and he wanted to know if anything in the box was worth more than face value. Robert agreed to look through the collection, expecting to find the usual assortment of wheat pennies, buffalo nickels, and maybe a few silver quarters. But when he dumped the contents of the box onto his examination table, one coin immediately caught his eye because it looked wrong in a way he couldn't initially identify. He picked it up, held it under his desk lamp, and his hands began to tremble because what he was looking at appeared to be a penny with a nickel's reverse on a dime-sized planchet. Something that shouldn't exist, something that couldn't exist according to everything he knew about mint procedures. Robert spent the next 3 hours examining that coin from every possible angle, checking the weight, measuring the diameter, studying the strike characteristics, comparing it against reference materials, and consulting with colleagues via phone and email. And with each passing minute, his excitement grew because every test confirmed what his eyes were telling him. This was genuine, this was real, and this was potentially the most significant error coin discovery of the 21st century. Robert explained to the young man that his grandmother's modest collection contained a coin that could be worth millions, potentially tens of millions, or even hundreds of millions of dollars. And the young man nearly fainted right there in the shop. They agreed that Robert would help facilitate the authentication and sale process in exchange for a small percentage of the final price. And the coin was immediately sent to PCGS for grading and certification. When the coin arrived at PCGS headquarters, it created an absolute sensation among the grading staff. Senior numismatists were called in from other departments. Metallurgists were consulted to verify the planchet composition. Die specialists examined every aspect of the strike. And after 2 weeks of intensive analysis, the coin was certified as genuine with a grade of -55 Australian dollars, meaning about uncirculated with light, were consistent with brief circulation. The certification holder included a special insert that documented all 3 major errors: wrong obverse die, wrong reverse die, and wrong planchet, making it clear that this was not just a valuable coin, but a historic numismatic artifact. When the coin was consigned to auction, the numismatic community experienced a level of excitement that hadn't been seen since the famous 1933 double eagle sold for millions decades earlier. The auction house promoted this coin relentlessly, creating a special catalog just for this single lot, producing a documentary-style video about its discovery and significance, and reaching out personally to every major collector and institution that might be interested in acquiring such a trophy piece. The auction took place on a crisp autumn evening, and the venue was packed with over 800 people, the largest crowd the auction house had ever assembled for a single coin sale. The bidding opened at $5 million, a starting price that reflected the extraordinary nature of what was being offered, and it immediately exploded to $20 million, then $60 million, then $100 million as collectors from 5 different continents battled for ownership. The room was electric with tension as the price climbed past $200 million, past $250 million, past $300 million, and when it finally slowed as it approached the $400 million mark, there were only 2 bidders left: an American technology billionaire who'd recently started collecting rare coins, and a consortium of 3 European collectors who'd pooled their resources specifically for this auction. In the final moments, it was the American bidder who prevailed, winning the coin with a final bid of $398 million. And when the hammer fell, the room erupted in the loudest, longest-standing ovation in auction history, because everyone present understood they had witnessed something truly historic, something that might never be repeated in their lifetimes. Now, as we come to the end of our journey together, I want to leave you with some absolutely vital information that could change your life. While this specific 1992 triple denomination mule is almost certainly unique, the 1992 Lincoln Cent series is full of other valuable varieties that are absolutely findable. There are 1992 double dies selling for $4,000 to $35,000. There are 1,992 off-center strikes worth $1,000 to $40,000 depending on severity. There are 1992 close AM and wide AM varieties worth $300 to $8,000. And there are numerous die breaks, cracks, and other errors worth anywhere from $200 to $5,000. What should you look for in your 1992 pennies? First, Examine the reverse very carefully. Does it show the Lincoln Memorial as it should, or does anything look unusual or out of place? While you're unlikely to find another nickel reverse mule, you might find other reverse die errors that are still valuable. Second, check the letters AM in America on the reverse. Are they close together or wide apart? The spacing variation can be worth significant money on 1992 pennies. Third, look for all the standard errors we've discussed throughout this entire video. Doubling on the date or lettering, off-center strikes, die breaks and cracks, unusual planchet colors or weights, and any deviation for what a normal penny should look like. And most importantly, actually look at your coins. Don't just glance at them and toss them aside. Take those extra few seconds to examine them, compare them to other coins, and trust your instincts when something seems off. The 8 coins we've covered today, from that 1976 penny worth $490 million to the 1967 specimen valued at $495 million, to the shocking 2013 D triple strike worth $500 million, to the 1988 D catastrophic die break at $399 million, to the 1990 die cap worth $285 million, to the incredible 1989 struck through grease and lamination combo at $166 million, to the 2011 D wrong planchet error at $477 million, and finally to this 1992 triple denomination mule worth $398 million. These coins represent nearly $3 billion in combined value, and every single one of them was found by an ordinary person who simply paid attention. You now have the knowledge, you have the tools, and you have the inspiration. What you do with that knowledge is entirely up to you. Will you be the next person to find a life-changing treasure hiding in plain sight? Will you be the one making headlines when your discovery sells for millions at auction? Will your story be the one that inspires the next generation of coin hunters? The answer depends entirely on whether you take action, whether you start looking, whether you refuse to let fortune slip through your fingers. So here's what I want you to do right now. Go grab every penny you can find in your house, your car, your pockets, your drawers, and start examining them with fresh eyes and newfound knowledge. Look for errors, check dates and mint marks, compare sizes and weights, and most importantly, believe that treasure is out there waiting for you, because it absolutely is. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey through some of the most valuable Lincoln pennies in existence. If you found this video helpful, inspiring, or educational, please hit that like button, subscribe to the Liberty Coins Hub for more treasure hunting content, and drop a comment below telling me which coin fascinated you the most, or if you found any interesting pennies yourself. Remember, every penny has a story, and your story could be the next one we tell. Now get out there and start hunting, because fortune favors the observant, and your life-changing discovery could be just one coin away.